Bible Wars. No, not a game about the debate between evolutionism and creationism, as you maybe imagine here in the name, but simply a game about ancient biblical combat between armies that were portrayed in the Bible. This is an independently produced game from the 10-minute war game series from War Coach Games. The game, this is like the base set. It contains 2 armies that I separate with the rule sheet, and there are 4 more armies available. I guess you can purchase them and combine them and expand the game that way, but let me show you how the game works in general. We have a card that acts as the cover. Then in this set we have the Egyptian army, the rule sheet, and the Canaanite army. Each army comes with a deck, and you have a rule sheet that is very short. This is it. These are all the rules. At the beginning of the game, each player takes a deck, shuffles the deck, and draws 20 cards that will form the deck that will be used for that game. Assume that this is 20 cards, and assume that this is 20 cards. Then the oldest player goes first according to the rule sheet, but of course I guess there is no real rule against you choosing whoever wants to go first. From the 20 cards in your hand, you select 5 cards that you place in a line in front of you, more or less like this. These cards represent units, and units will have usually a generic combat factor. For example, these mercenaries have a generic combat factor of 300, and they may have a special combat factor that applies only against some types of units. For example, these guys have 350 when they're fighting against lancers, which are units identified by that symbol. Archers, 250 normal, 300 against axe, spear, and swordman. Lancer cavalry, 200 normal. 550, this is a very high combat factor against archers and slingers, things like that. Then the opponent, after looking at the initial line of card, does the same, aligning 5 units face up, 1 facing each unit of the opponent. I'm placing all the cards facing in this direction just to show how the game works, but of course usually they would be facing the other player, which is sitting on that side. Then both players look at the initial 5 columns here, and they add another card to each column behind the initial card, but these cards are placed simultaneously and face down. Once this is done, now you probably imagine what the next step is going to be. You are going to check to compare each column individually. The players simply reveal the cards that they have placed in the second rank, and then they will simply total the combat strength that they have in that column, which of course will depend on the type of units that the opponent has placed there. Let me give you an example. These guys have 300 normal and 350 against lancers, but there are no lancers here, only spearmen, so 300, and this is 350 against all. So here the Egyptians have 650. The Canaanites, 300 normal and 350 against lancers, but no lancers, 350 normal. Okay, here we also have 650. If you have a tie, like in this case, both cards in the first line of the battle are eliminated. If a player has a higher result than the opponent, then only the player with the lower results loses the card indicating the unit in the front line. And if your frontline unit has been eliminated, you advance the second card to fill that slot. And you repeat the process for all cards. Suppose that here the Egyptians win, then you remove that card. Suppose that here we have another tie. I'm not doing the math, it's just fictional. So we do like this. Here the Canaanites win. So this card is removed. This goes there. This is revealed. And here the Egyptians win. This card is eliminated. And that card goes there. After the first round of combat, you pick up your deck again and you place cards face down to fill all the slots that have been left empty after the first round of combat, and you repeat the procedure. You now turn face up all the cards that were just placed, and again you compare each column individually. Again, you remove cards that are tied or that have a total lower combat factor of that of the opponent in that column, and you keep repeating the procedure, eliminating cards and replacing them until one of the two players does not have enough cards left to fill up all the empty slots in the second line. At that point the game is over, and the player that has the highest number of cards on the board, on the table, and in his hand is the winner. This is it. This is pretty much how the game works. There is one thing or two more about some special cards and units, but I do not need to talk about those. This is how the game works. Well, how does it work? Well, first, this is not really a 10-minute war game. This is a 20-minute war game. It takes more or less that long to play a game. And the game is an interesting filler. It has a bluffing component that I enjoy. Because of course, since the power of many units is relative to what the opponent is placed in a certain slot, you have to try to figure out what the opponent may do in a certain location and what the opponent is thinking you will do next in that location. There is that factor that, to me, makes the game interesting. This being said, the game has a large luck factor. The initial draw, the 20 cards that you receive at the beginning of the game and that you're stuck with, that is it. And of course you may get cards that are not as effective against the cards that the opponent has drawn for that battle. So you may have battles that will be unbalanced because of that. And I'm not sure that all armies play equally well, that they are all well balanced, even before the initial draw, but there are more armies that you can purchase, and maybe that will allow you to create perfectly balanced pairings, or pairings that have an unbalance that matches the difference in level of experience of the two players. And the rules are simple, but you still have to figure out a couple of basic strategies. There are still decisions that you have to make, because if you send out your most powerful units too early and those get destroyed, then the opponent may be able to construct certain columns that are so powerful and have a certain combination of cards that will be impossible for you to win any battle in that column. But is that going to be a game breaker? Not necessarily, because you may be able to do the same in another column. Even having that automatic failure in each turn doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose the game, because the opponent has committed a lot of powerful cards there and you just keep throwing your weak cards there. So I've seen that happening, but I didn't find that that by itself was something that would make the game broken. The luck factor still is pretty much there. On the other hand, this is a game that in its simplicity clearly could be the object of many variants. For example, I was wondering if there could be a variant in which in each turn you can discard a card from your hand and draw another card from the deck of unused cards. In this way, the total number of cards in your hand doesn't change, so the pace of the game, the countdown system remains the same, but you have better chances of getting new cards, better cards if you do not have cards that match the present situation. That just may make the game a little more dynamic and a little more exciting. Because if you know that your hand is doomed, you're trying to do the best that you can, but sometimes you just see your defeat coming way before that happens. Maybe another possible variant would be to allow the players to select the deck, to give them a total amount of points that they can have. For example, to form an army with 6,000 standard combat factors, and that may result in a thinner deck with powerful units, in a thicker deck with many not so powerful units. I'm just wondering if there are ways in which that can be handled. That probably will make the players feel more in control. On the other hand, of course, that will make the game considerably longer. The build-up phase will be longer. The game would result into something maybe similar to Pocket Battles, in which in fact the selection of the army is pretty much as long, if not sometimes longer, than the resolution of the game itself. In any case, I think this is a game that you can experiment with. As is, the game is an entertaining filler that, yes, again, it can fill 20 minutes between two other games. It can work as a quick warm-up game in a game night. You must not mind a certain degree of luck here, that sometimes is going to be higher than others, but it is not always going to be the determining factor. So overall, a luck influence, but not completely luck-based filler with interesting options and a pretty nice bluffing factor. Overall, this is a filler that, as a light game, I enjoyed.